So here I am, standing in a place I never imagined I'd end up just months after getting married for the second time. Funny, isn't it, how life's got a twisted sense of humor? Anyway, let me give you the backstory so this whole mess makes sense because, honestly, I need someone to understand how I ended up here, and maybe reassure me that I'm not losing it. I split from my first wife, let's call her Jessica, after 5 years. We didn't have the best connection, and I'll admit, I started noticing other women a bit too much. Figured it was only fair to set her free. Right around then, I met someone else, let's call her Amanda. She was, well, captivating, beautiful, always laughing, with this magnetic personality that just drew people in. 1 month after leaving Jessica, I was down on one knee, holding a ring for Amanda. Yeah, I know it was fast, but it had that kind of crazy energy that just felt right. For a while, it was pure bliss, like one of those wild love stories from the movies. I couldn't picture ever wanting someone else. But then, one day, I came home early to grab some papers for work and noticed the shower was still damp, which was weird since neither of us was supposed to be home. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but something didn't sit right. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, why's the shower wet? Are you cheating? I mean, it sounded insane. Instead, I went with the route that a guy driven by suspicion might take. I set up cameras in our bedroom. Yeah, it felt crazy doing it. I mean, with our love life being as intense as it was, why would she even look elsewhere? For the first few days, I kept checking the footage, feeling like an idiot every time I saw nothing out of the ordinary. By the 5th day, I almost convinced myself I'd lost it, ready to tear down the cameras and laugh at my own ridiculous doubts. Then I saw her, wearing this lingerie I'd never seen before. And this wasn't the usual stuff she'd pick out for me. No, this outfit was like a flashing sign. For someone new. And that someone wasn't just any stranger. It wasn't even some buddy or a coworker. No, it was my dad. My own father. I felt like my heart just stopped. There they were, plain as day, like something out of a twisted nightmare, tearing apart everything I thought I knew. To say I was furious doesn't even come close. I wanted to smash the laptop, punch through a wall, anything to let out the anger boiling inside me. But I just sat there, in shock, watching the woman I thought was my fresh start, with the man who'd raised me. After that, I knew I couldn't just let this go. My head was spinning, heart pounding, but there was no way I could sit on this. So, I drove straight to my parents' house, barely holding it together the whole way. I must have looked like a madman because the moment my dad opened the door, I swung, one solid punch right to his face. He stumbled back, totally blindsided, while my mom, who was standing behind him, started screaming, clueless about what was going on. "What the hell are you doing?" she yelled, but I couldn't even explain. All I could do was point at my dad and shout, calling him out for what he'd done. My mom kept pressing, hoping it was some kind of misunderstanding. But when I looked her in the eye and told her about him and Amanda, she just broke down. Dad had nothing to say. No excuses, no words. He just looked down, ashamed. My mom fell apart, crying over the betrayal, and I turned around and walked out. I didn't care about the mess I was leaving behind. I just knew I needed to get as far away from both of them as possible. I drove straight home, with rage, heartbreak, and betrayal all churning inside me. When I got there, Amanda wasn't back yet, so I started packing up her things. Every dress, every pair of shoes, everything she'd brought into our home went into bags, which I dumped outside. When she finally got back and saw her stuff on the porch, she looked confused, like she thought it was some kind of cruel joke. Then I told her. I opened the door just a crack, enough to let her know that I'd seen everything and that I never wanted to see her again. She started bawling, putting on this desperate show, begging to be let back inside, but I wasn't buying it. When I laid it all out, her face went as white as a ghost. But then, like clockwork, she switched gears into her usual fix it mode. She went right to the waterworks, crocodile tears streaming, though I could see her mind racing, searching for any lie she thought I might believe. "It wasn't what it looked like," she stammered, voice shaking. I swear your dad, he practically forced himself on me. I was so confused, so scared. I didn't even know how to react at that point. Honestly, I almost laughed, not because any of this was remotely funny. Terrified? Confused? I'd watched the footage myself, seen her dressed up, all over him. There was nothing hesitant about it. Cut the act, Amanda, I told her, my voice cold as ice. Don't insult me with this confused routine. I know exactly what I saw. Then her face changed. Her expression twisted into something harsh, calculating. Gone was the fake innocence, replaced by a look I barely recognized. She crossed her arms and lifted her chin, defiantly. What did you expect, huh? She sneered. You're so dull, so predictable. Maybe if you hadn't been so wrapped up in your perfect little life, I wouldn't have needed to find excitement elsewhere. That one hit deep. But she didn't stop. You're acting so high and mighty, but maybe you should take a long look in the mirror. She went on, her voice dripping with contempt. You weren't giving me what I needed. You were too busy being safe, stable, whatever. So maybe this is your fault, too. My fault? She was actually putting the blame on me. Anger boiled over like never before. Here I was, reeling from this betrayal, and she had the audacity to act like her choices were somehow on me. It was like I was looking at a stranger, some twisted version of the woman I thought I knew. Get out, I said, barely holding back the fury in my voice. Take your stuff, your lies, and get out of my life. She stormed off, slamming the door behind her, and suddenly the silence hit me, heavy as a ton of bricks. I was alone, standing in a house that still held the ghosts of the life I thought we were building. Everything I believed in had shattered in minutes, leaving me staring at the pieces. I started replaying the past few months in my head, trying to spot the signs I might have missed. Every smile she'd flashed me, every "I love you," every night spent together, was it all just a lie? I didn't want to believe it, but there it was, staring me down, forcing me to face the truth. And then guilt crept in. As much as I hated it, her words echoed in my mind. Could it be that I hadn't been enough? Had I missed clues that she wasn't happy? My anger turned inward, twisting into this horrible mix of self-blame and doubt. But deep down, I knew what was real. No matter how boring she claimed I was, it didn't justify what she did, and definitely not with who she did it. The days blurred by, and it hit me in waves. Sometimes I'd feel numb, just going through the motions. Other times I'd be seething, wanting to call her, yell, demand answers. But I knew that wouldn't change a thing. She wasn't the person I thought, and no explanation could undo the damage. Then there was my father, the man I'd looked up to my entire life, who was supposed to have my back. The betrayal from him cut just as deep. I couldn't bring myself to talk to him. Each time he crossed my mind, I saw that footage replaying in my head, the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. Eventually, I realized staying in that house was like reliving the betrayal every day. So, I packed up my things, left the city, and cut off all contact with both of them. My mom tried reaching out, but I didn't have the heart to face her either. I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine in a family that now felt like a bad dream. Leaving the city was like finally being able to breathe again, though even miles away, the memories still haunted me, creeping into every quiet moment. I cycled through anger, heartbreak, and resentment, wondering how the two people I trusted most could betray me so deeply. But somewhere inside I knew I had to let it go if I wanted to move on. Days turned into weeks, and then into months, and slowly, I started putting my life back together. I poured myself into work, got into new hobbies, and reconnected with old friends. Therapy helped too. It forced me to face the pain, the self-doubt, and the endless questions I'd been asking myself since that day. Gradually, I stopped blaming myself, realizing that their choices were theirs alone, not mine. Then one day, my mom called, and for the first time, I picked up. She told me she and my father were seeing a therapist, trying to work through things. She asked if I'd consider talking to him, even just for her sake. I knew she was hurting too, blindsided by a betrayal that had shattered her world as much as mine. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet him. We sat across from each other in a coffee shop, and for the first time, I saw him not as my father, but as a deeply flawed, broken person. He apologized, looking straight into my eyes, admitting he had no excuse for what he'd done. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me a small piece of closure. I forgave him, not for him, but for me. Holding on to that anger felt like letting them win, and I was ready to take back control of my life. As for Amanda, I never spoke to her again. She reached out once, sent a message saying she regretted everything and wanted to talk, but I didn't reply. She'd already shown me who she truly was, and there was no space for someone like that in my life anymore. The silence was my closure. Over time, the wounds started to heal, and I found myself again, stronger and a bit wiser, carrying a lesson I never asked for but probably needed. I learned to trust my instincts, to recognize my own worth, and to set boundaries that no one would ever cross again. If you're reading this and you're in a similar place, here's what I tell you: people will reveal who they really are, no matter how hard they try to hide it. Trust yourself, even if it means questioning the people you love. And if they betray you, remember, that's on them, not on you. Don't let their mistakes define who you are or how you see yourself. In the end, I didn't just survive this. I came out the other side stronger. Life isn't always gentle, but sometimes, the hardest lessons shape you into the person you're meant to become. Thank you, listeners, for your incredible support and for tuning into my stories here on YouTube. Your enthusiasm and feedback means so much. Stay tuned for more, and take care until the next one.